Hey you, yeah, I'm talking to you right now. Before we dive into this super cool story, I've got a fun question for you. Have you ever had a nosy neighbor who acted like they were the boss of everything? Maybe they peeked over your fence or complained about your toys in the yard. Drop a quick comment below and tell me where you're watching from today. Oh, and if you love stories where the good guy wins in the most awesome way, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss a single second of what's coming up. Okay, let's jump in. Close your eyes for a second and imagine a place called Sunny Hills. It's a quiet little neighborhood where everything looks perfect. Kids zoom around on shiny bikes, laughing as they race each other. Dogs wag their tails, chasing pesky squirrels up big oak trees. Every house has a bright green lawn trimmed neat as a picture. Flowers bloom in pretty rows and mailboxes stand straight like soldiers. It's the kind of place where you think everyone's happy all the time. There's one house that's a little different, and that's where our story begins. That house belongs to Jake Miller. Jake's a guy who's 25 years old with a big, goofy smile that makes you want to smile back. He's got messy brown hair that sticks up sometimes, and he's always wearing a t-shirt with something funny on it, like a cartoon dog or a silly joke. Jake loves fixing things, bikes, radios, even old toys. If it's broken, he can make it work again like magic. He just moved to Sunny Hills, renting a small house with a tiny front yard. It's not fancy like the other houses, but Jake doesn't care. To him, it's home. When Jake rolled into town with his beat-up truck, he thought Sunny Hills would be a chill place to live. He pictured making new friends, maybe grilling burgers in his backyard or waving to neighbors as they passed by. He was ready for a fresh start, a place where he could relax and be himself. But oh boy, was he in for a surprise. See, not everyone in Sunny Hills was ready to welcome him, and one person in particular had her eyes locked on him from the very first day. Her name, Karen Thompson. And let me tell you, Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the president of the HOA. That's the group that makes rules for the neighborhood, like what color your house can be or how tall your grass can grow. Karen wasn't like Jake at all. While Jake was laid back and friendly, Karen was, well, let's just say she was the opposite. She walked around like she owned the whole street. Every morning, she'd march through Sunny Hills with a clipboard in her hand, her lips pressed tight like she was sucking on a lemon. Her shoes clicked on the sidewalk and her eyes darted left and right, looking for anything that wasn't perfect. A kid's bike left in a driveway, she'd write it down. A mailbox with a tiny dent. That scribble, scribble, to Karen, Sunny Hills was her kingdom and she was the queen. And Jake, to her, he was just some kid who didn't belong. The first time Karen saw Jake, she stopped dead in her tracks. He was unloading boxes from his truck, humming a tune when her shadow fell over him. "Young man," she said, her voice sharp like a teacher scolding a kid. "This is Sunny Hills. We have standards here." Jake looked up, a little confused, and gave her his big grin. "Hey, I'm Jake, just moving in, nice to meet you." But Karen didn't smile back. She just stared at him, then at his truck, then at the little house. She said, writing something on her clipboard. "We'll see how long you last." Jake didn't think much of it at first. He figured she was just grumpy, maybe having a bad day. He went back to unpacking, setting up his tools in the garage and hanging a funny sign on his door that said, "Home Sweet Chaos." But Karen wasn't done with him, not by a long shot. Every single day after that, she'd walk by his house slow and steady like a shark circling a boat. Her clipboard was always ready and her pen was always moving. Now Jake started to notice her staring at his yard, his mailbox, even the way he parked his truck. It was like she was hunting for something to complain about. Now Jake wasn't the kind of guy to get mad easily. He'd just wave at her all friendly and say, "Morning, Karen." But that only made her madder. To her, Jake was a problem. His little house didn't have perfect flowers like the others. His grass wasn't always mowed exactly right. And worst of all, he didn't seem to care about her rules. To Karen, that was a crime. She'd spent years making sure every house in Sunny Hills looked like it belonged in a magazine. And Jake's place. It stuck out like a sore thumb. But here's the thing Karen didn't know. Jake wasn't just some random guy who liked fixing stuff. He had a secret, a big one, something that would turn her perfect little world upside down. See, Jake didn't move to Sunny Hills by accident. He wasn't there just to rent a house and chill. There was a reason he picked that little house on Maple Street. A reason he kept his eyes open, watching everything that happened around him. And Karen. She was about to find out that Jake wasn't as ordinary as he looked. Let's paint the picture a bit more. Sunny Hills wasn't a huge place, just a few streets with cozy houses all in a row. There was a park at the end of the block where kids played soccer and moms pushed strollers. A little store sold ice cream cones on hot days. Everyone knew each other, or at least they acted like they did. But under all that friendliness, there was something else going on. People were a little scared of Karen, not because she was mean to their faces. Oh no, she was too clever for that. She'd smile and say, "Good morning," but then she'd send you a letter saying your fence was half an inch too tall. She had a way of making people feel small, like they had to obey her or else. Jake saw it right away. He'd watch from his porch as Karen stopped to chat with neighbors. Her chats weren't really chats, they were lectures. "Your dog barks too much," she'd tell Mr. Lopez, who'd nod and look at the ground. "Those Christmas lights need to come down," she'd say to Mrs. Carter, who'd mumble an apology. Nobody argued with Karen. Nobody dared. She had power in Sunny Hills, and she loved using it. To her, Jake was just another person to boss around, a kid who didn't know his place. But Jake wasn't like the others. He didn't shrink when Karen glared at him. He didn't say sorry when she complained. Instead, he'd laugh or make a joke, which drove her nuts. One day, she caught him watering his lawn and marched right up. "That hose is dripping," she said, pointing like it was a crime scene. "You're wasting water." Jake just shrugged. "Oops, my bad, want me to fix it?" Karen huffed and walked away, her clipboard shaking in her hand. She wasn't used to people talking back. And Jake, he was only getting started. The neighborhood started to notice Jake, too. Kids liked him because he'd fix their bikes for free. One time he helped a girl named Mia get her kite out of a tree, and she told everyone he was the coolest. Parents were curious about him. "Who's that new guy?" they'd whisper at the park. "Seems nice, but Karen's got it out for him." They didn't know the half of it. Jake wasn't just being nice to fit in. He was watching, listening, keeping track of things nobody else saw. See, Jake had a knack for noticing stuff. Like how Karen's car was always parked a little funny, taking up 2 spaces. Or how she'd linger by mailboxes that weren't hers, peeking inside when she thought nobody was looking. Most people didn't care, they were too busy living their lives, but Jake cared. He'd sit on his porch, sipping lemonade, and watch her strut by with that clipboard. He'd see her frown at his house, muttering to herself. And every time he'd smile to himself, like he knew something she didn't. What was Jake's secret? I'm not gonna spill it just yet, that'd ruin the fun. But let's just say he wasn't in Sunny Hills to make trouble, he was there to fix trouble. And Karen was about to learn that the hard way. She thought she had Jake all figured out, a young guy who didn't belong, someone she could scare off with a few nasty letters. But Jake wasn't scared, not one bit. He was ready for her, and she had no idea what was coming. Picture Jake's house for a second. It's small, with white paint that's a little chipped. The front yard's got a patch of grass, a few weeds, and a single scrappy tree. Nothing special, but Jake made it his own. He hung up a string of fairy lights on his porch just for fun. He set up a little table outside where he'd tinker with gadgets, old radios, a broken clock, even a toy robot. Kids would stop by and watch, eyes wide, as he turned junk into treasure. "How'd you do that?" they asked. Jake would wink. "Magic," he'd say, but it wasn't magic. It was just Jake being Jake. Karen hated all of it. The lights, the table, the kids laughing. To her it was messy. Wrong, not Sunny Hills material. She'd write notes about it on her clipboard, her pen scratching so hard it almost tore the paper. She'd dream up new rules just for Jake, like no outdoor furniture or no lights after 8 p.m. She was sure she could make him leave. After all, she'd done it before. There was a guy a few years back who moved out after Karen sent him 10 letters in 1 month. She was proud of that, but Jake, he wasn't that guy. One morning, Jake was sweeping his porch when Karen stopped by. She didn't even say hello. "Your yard's a disgrace," she said, pointing at a dandelion. "Fix it or I'll fine you." Jake leaned on his broom, still smiling. "Good to see you too, Karen. Want some lemonade?" Her face turned red and she stormed off. Jake watched her go, shaking his head. He wasn't mad. He was ready for what? You'll find out soon enough. Sunny Hills was about to get a whole lot less sunny for Karen. Jake's secret was like a bomb waiting to go off. He wasn't just fixing bikes or making kids laugh. He was building something bigger, something that would make Karen wish she'd never messed with him. But for now, he played it cool. He waved to neighbors, fixed their stuff, and kept his little house just the way he liked it. And every day, Karen's clipboard got busier, her frown got deeper, and Jake's smile got wider. So what do you think's gonna happen next? Stick around because this story about to get wild. And hey, don't forget to tell me in the comments, what's the nosiest thing a neighbor's ever done to you? Let's see who's got the craziest story out there. It all began with Jake's electric sign. He made it himself, and boy was it cool. The sign sat in his tiny front yard, just a little box with bright lights that blinked on when the sun went down. Every night, it showed fun messages like "Go Team" or "Happy Friday." Sometimes it even said "Smile" in big glowing letters. It wasn't big or loud, just a happy little thing to cheer people up. Most folks in Sunny Hills loved it. Kids would ride their bikes by and giggle, pointing at the colors flashing red, blue, and green. Moms and dads walking their dogs would grin and wave at Jake. "Nice sign," they'd call out. It made the street feel a bit more fun, like a party was always about to start. But not everyone was a fan. Oh no, there was one person who couldn't stand that sign, and her name was Karen Thompson. Karen was the HOA president, which meant she thought she was in charge of everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything from how short your grass should be to what kind of flowers you could plant. To Karen, Jake's sign wasn't fun. It wasn't cute. It was a problem. A big, blinking problem that made her madder than a cat in a bathtub. One sunny afternoon, Karen marched right up to Jake's porch. Her face was as red as a tomato and her hands were on her hips like she was ready to fight. "That junk is an eyesore," she yelled, pointing at the sign. Her voice was so loud, kids down the street stopped playing to stare. "This is Sunny Hills, young man, not some silly circus. Take that ugly thing down right now or I'll make you sorry." She looked like she meant it too, with her eyes all squinty and her lips pressed tight. Jake was on his porch sipping lemonade when she started shouting. He didn't jump or get mad. Nope, he just leaned back in his chair, calm as could be, and gave her a little smile. "It's on my property, ma'am," he said, nice and polite. "I checked the rules, the signs allowed." His voice was steady, like he was talking about the weather, not arguing with the neighborhood boss. Karen's eyes got even narrower, like slits on a snake. "We'll see about that," she hissed, her words sharp as a bee's sting. Then she spun around and stomped off, her shoes smacking the sidewalk so hard you'd think it hurt the ground. Jake watched her go, still smiling. He shrugged, took another sip of his drink, and went back to tinkering with a broken toy car he was fixing. He wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble, oh, it was already knocking at his door, loud and clear. The very next day, Jake found something in his mailbox. It wasn't a bill or a coupon, it was a fancy letter from the HOA, sealed with a shiny sticker. He opened it up and guess what? It was from Karen. The letter said his electric sign broke some rule called Section 7B, visual disturbances. Nobody in Sunny Hills had ever heard of that rule before. It sounded like something Karen made up just to mess with him. The letter ended with big, bold words, "Remove the sign or face a fine." Jake read it, laughed out loud, and tossed it in the trash can. "Nice try, Karen," he muttered, shaking his head. He wasn't scared of her threats, not one bit. But Jake wasn't dumb either. He started paying closer attention to Karen after that. He noticed things, little things that didn't add up. Like how her fancy silver car was always parked in a weird way, taking up half the sidewalk so moms with strollers had to walk in the street. or how she'd snap at kids for playing too loud, even when they were just kicking a ball in their own yard. "Quiet down," she'd yell, waving her clipboard like a sword. Nobody ever argued with her, though. Not Mr. Lopez, who kept his dog inside now. Not Mrs. Carter, who took down her Christmas lights early because Karen said so. Nobody dared stand up to the HOA queen. Jake saw it all from his porch. He'd sit there in the evenings, watching the neighborhood go by. Kids would wave at him and he'd wave back. Dogs would bark and he'd chuckle. But when Karen walked past, he'd get real quiet, his eyes sharp like a hawk's. He saw how she acted like she owned the place, how she'd glare at his sign every night, muttering words he couldn't hear but could guess weren't nice. How she'd scribble on her clipboard, probably writing more fake rules to throw at him. It was clear Karen wanted him gone. She thought his sign, his house, his whole vibe didn't belong in her perfect sunny hills. The funny thing, Jake didn't care what she thought. He kept his sign lit up bright and proud. He'd change the messages just to keep it fresh. "Have a great day." One night, "Go Sunny Hills." The next. Kids loved guessing what it'd say tomorrow. But Karen, every new message made her angrier. She'd stop in front of his yard, hands clenched, staring at the lights like they were her worst enemy. One time, a kid named Mia rode by on her bike and shouted, "I love your sign, Jake." Karen spun around so fast she almost dropped her clipboard. "It's a disgrace," she snapped, but Mia just pedaled away, laughing. Jake heard it all, but he didn't say a word. He just kept being Jake, fixing bikes for kids, helping neighbors with little chores, and keeping his sign glowing. But deep down, he was thinking hard. He knew Karen wasn't going to stop with one letter. She was like a dog with a bone, and that bone was him. Sure enough, a few days later, another letter showed up. This one said his sign was too bright and disturbed the peace. It demanded he turn it off by Friday or pay $100. Jake read it, snorted, and added it to the trash pile. "Keep trying, Karen," he said to himself, grinning. By now, the neighbors were starting to whisper. "Karen's really mad about that sign," Mrs. Carter told Mr. Lopez at the park. "She says it's ruining the neighborhood." Mr. Lopez shrugged. "I think it's fun, Jake's a good kid." But nobody said that to Karen's face. They were too afraid of her letters, her fines, her rules. Jake, though, he wasn't afraid. He'd wave at Karen when she passed, all friendly like they were pals. "Hey, Karen, nice day, huh?" he'd call out. She'd glare and walk faster, her clipboard shaking. It drove her nuts that he wasn't scared. But here's the thing, Jake wasn't just sitting back and waiting for Karen to give up. He was watching her closer than ever. He noticed how she'd park her car in front of other people's houses, not just hers. He saw her yell at a delivery guy for dropping a package too loud. And one time, late at night when he was taking out his trash, he caught her standing by a neighbor's mailbox, looking around like she didn't want to be seen. What was she up to? Jake didn't know yet, but he tucked that little moment away in his brain, like a puzzle piece he'd need later. Karen thought she had the upper hand. She thought Jake was just some guy she could bully until he packed up and left. But she didn't know Jake. She didn't know he was tougher than he looked, smarter than she thought, and ready for whatever she threw at him. His sign wasn't going anywhere, and neither was he. Trouble was brewing in Sunny Hills, and it wasn't because of a few blinking lights. It was because Karen had picked a fight with the wrong guy. Days went by in Sunny Hills, and things got tougher for Jake. Karen, the HOA president, wasn't giving up. Every evening, she'd walk by his little house, her eyes locked on his electric sign like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. That sign, oh, it drove her nuts. It was just a small box with bright lights, flashing happy messages like "Go Team" or "Have a fun day." But to Karen, it was trouble. She'd stand there muttering words under her breath, her face all scrunched up like she'd bitten a sour lemon. Now, Jake could see her from his porch, but he didn't say a thing. He just sipped his soda and watched, cool as a cucumber. Then Karen got sneakier. One morning, Jake stepped outside and found something new. Sticky notes. Yup, little yellow sticky notes plastered on his front door. They weren't nice notes either. "Take down this trash," one said in big, angry letters. "You're ruining our neighborhood," said another. There was even one that just said, "Stop it." Jake pulled them off one by one and read them with a chuckle. Did Karen think a few notes would scare him? Nope, he wasn't budging. Instead, he decided to have some fun. That night, he changed his sign's message to "Spread kindness." It was his way of saying, "I'm staying right here, Karen." But Karen wasn't done, not even close. She was like a dog chasing a squirrel. She wouldn't let go. A few days later, Jake woke up to a big surprise. His sign wasn't working right. The lights were flickering, blinking on and off like they were broken. Jake knelt down and checked it out. Someone had messed with the wires, twisting them all wrong. It wasn't an accident either. Jake knew exactly who did it. "Oh, Karen," he said to himself, shaking his head. It only took him 10 minutes to fix the wires, and soon the sign was glowing again, brighter than ever. But as he tightened the last screw, he thought, "She's getting bold." Later that day, Jake called his friend Mike. "Dude, she messed with my sign," he said, laughing a little. Mike's voice crackled through the phone. "Whoa, you're poking the bear, man," Jake grinned, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe the bear needs to learn a lesson," he said. Mike laughed, but Jake wasn't just joking. He had a plan, a big one, and Karen was walking right into it without even knowing. See, Jake wasn't just some guy who liked fixing stuff. He didn't move to Sunny Hills by chance. There was a reason he was here, living in that little house with the scrappy yard. A secret reason. Nobody in the neighborhood knew it, not even Karen. While she was busy plotting ways to get rid of his sign, Jake was watching her like a hawk. He noticed things most people missed, like how Karen acted when she thought nobody was looking. And let me tell you, what he saw was weird. One night, Jake was taking his trash to the curb. It was late and the street was quiet. That's when he saw her. Karen, she was standing by a neighbor's mailbox, not her own. She looked left, then right, like she didn't want anyone to see her. Then she opened the mailbox and peeked inside. Jake froze, watching from the shadows. Why was she doing that? It wasn't her mail. He didn't say anything, just slipped back into his house. But he added that moment to his mental list of Karen's shady stuff. Another time, Jake was fixing a kid's bike in his yard when he saw something else. Karen was walking down the street, her clipboard in hand as usual. A delivery truck had just dropped off a package at Mrs. Carter's house. It was a small box sitting on her porch. Karen stopped, looked at it, and then, get this, she picked it up and tossed it into a trash can by the curb. Jake's jaw dropped. Who throws out someone else's package? He didn't run over or yell. Nope. He just watched, his brain ticking like a clock. Another piece for his puzzle. Jake started keeping track of everything. Every weird thing Karen did, every mean thing she said, like how she'd snap at kids for riding their scooters too fast. "Slow down or I'll tell your parents," she'd shout, waving her pen. Or how she'd leave notes on people's doors, not just Jake. Mr. Lopez got one saying his dog's barking was unacceptable. Poor guy started keeping his pup inside all day. Nobody stood up to her. They were scared of her rules, her fines, her power. But Jake, he wasn't scared, he was curious. He started wondering, what's Karen hiding? Why was she so mad about his sign? Why did she act like she owned Sunny Hills? The more he watched, the more he saw. Like how her fancy car was always parked wrong, blocking sidewalks. Or how she'd talk all sweet to neighbors' faces, then write mean notes behind their backs. Jake didn't tell anyone what he saw, not yet. He was building something bigger than a light-up sign. He was building a plan, piece by piece, like one of his fix-it projects. Things got even wilder one evening. Jake was in his garage, tinkering with an old radio, when he heard a loud voice outside. It was Karen, and she was mad. "I'm calling the cops," she shouted into her phone. Jake's ears perked up. He tiptoed to his window and peeked out. There she was, packing back and forth in front of his yard. Her face was red, and she was pointing at his sign like it was a monster. "Yes, there's an illegal sign on Maple Street," she told the phone. "It's disturbing the peace. You need to come right now." Jake leaned against the wall, watching her through the blinds. Most people would have been worried. A call to the cops, that's serious. But Jake, he wasn't worried at all. In fact, he smiled. A little sneaky smile, like he knew a secret joke. Why wasn't he scared? Because Jake had something up his sleeve, something Karen didn't know about. He could have gone outside and argued with her, told her to back off. But he didn't. Instead, he stayed quiet, letting her yell into her phone. He knew that call wasn't going to go the way she thought. See, Karen thought she was winning. She thought her notes, her messed up wires, and now her cop threat would finally make Jake take down his sign. She thought he'd pack up and leave, just like others had when she got tough. But Jake wasn't like them. He wasn't going anywhere. Every sticky note, every glare, every sneaky trick just made him more sure of his plan. And that plan, it was getting closer to being ready. Neighborhood was starting to buzz. Kids whispered to each other about Jake's sign. Karen hates it, one said, but it's so cool, said another. Parents talked at the park, their voices low. She's going after that new guy, Mrs. Carter said, shaking her head. Poor Jake. But Jake didn't need pity. He was fine, more than fine. He was watching, waiting, and putting it all together. Karen's attacks were getting worse, but so was Jake's secret. And soon, very soon, she'd find out what he was really up to. The next night, everything exploded in Sunny Hills. Jake was kicking back in his living room, munching on some popcorn and watching a funny show on TV. His little house was cozy, with fairy lights twinkling outside and his electric sign glowing in the yard. The sign said, "Be happy," that night, flashing bright colors to make the street smile. But then out of nowhere, red and blue lights lit up the whole neighborhood. They danced across Jake's walls like a disco party. He peeked out his window and saw 2 police cars parked right in front of his house. Their sirens were off, but those lights meant business. Jake stepped outside onto his porch, still holding his popcorn bowl. He wasn't scared or jumpy, not one bit. He looked as calm as if he was just going for a walk. Standing there in the glow of his sign was Karen. Oh boy, did she look proud. Her arms were crossed tight and she had a big smirk on her face, like she'd just won a giant prize. Behind her stood 2 cops, their badges shiny under the streetlights. Karen pointed right at Jake's house, her finger sharp like an arrow. "That's him," she shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's the troublemaker with the ugly sign. He's been causing problems for weeks." The neighbors started poking their heads out. Kids in pajamas pressed their noses against windows. Moms and dads stood in their yards, whispering to each other. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. Karen's voice carried down the street and she loved it. She thought she had Jake cornered like a cat with a mouse. But Jake, he didn't even blink. He slipped his hands into his pockets, cool as a cucumber, and leaned against his porch railing. He gave the cops a little nod, like they were old pals stopping by for a chat. One of the officers was tall, with a serious face and a deep voice. He stepped forward, his boots clicking on the sidewalk. "Sir," he said to Jake, "we got a call about a disturbance. Mind if we talk for a minute?" His eyes were steady but not mean. He was just doing his job. Jake shrugged, still smiling that easy smile of his. "Sure thing," he said. "Go ahead and talk, but maybe you should ask her a few questions first." He tilted his head toward Karen, his voice nice and calm, like he was pointing out a cloud in the sky. Karen's smirk dropped faster than a popsicle on a hot day. Her eyes got wide and her mouth opened like a fish. "What's that supposed to mean?" she snapped, her voice all high and squeaky. She took a step forward, pointing at Jake again. "He's the problem. That sign is breaking all our rules. I called you to fix this." She was so mad, her hands were shaking, and her clipboard, yup, she still had it, was wobbling like it might fall. The second officer, a shorter guy with a notebook in his hand, looked at Karen. He didn't smile. "Ma'am," he said, slow and clear, "we're not here about the sign." Karen froze. The whole street got quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. The officer flipped open his notebook and kept talking. "We got a tip. Someone reported some bad stuff going on, stealing mail, breaking things, and bothering people. And guess what? All the clues point to you." Karen's face went white as a sheet. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, but no words came out at first. Finally, she sputtered, "That's ridiculous, totally crazy." She waved her hands like she could shoo the words away. "I'm the HOA president. I make this place perfect. I don't do bad things, I stop them." Her voice was loud, but it sounded nervous now, not proud. The neighbors started whispering louder, their eyes big as they watched her squirm.